Okay, France also have a lot of protests. I think it's probably still ongoing, on and off
Yeah,
kind of.
yeah.
And their union said they're going to have big ones October 2nd. So what's the French protesting? Is that the same that they're just generally not happy, or do they have a particular goal they want to achieve?
I think the short answer is this, that both Britain and France and other countries in Europe also, by the way, are in
Oh,
a period of deep economic and social crisis. And I think, again, this isn't something that perhaps is fully understood outside these countries themselves. But living standards are declining,
mhm,
prices are rising, the economies are stagnant. There is a general sense that people have that we're falling behind in technology. And we are, by the way. I mean,
mhm,
the Americans are ahead of us in technology, and the gap is growing. The Chinese are far ahead of us in technology, and the gap is growing even further. There's also growing sense that the governments are not really interested in these problems, that they're
mhm,
mostly focused on other things, the war in Ukraine, for example. And this is creating and of course, there's also the issue of immigration, which is
uh-huh,
a major fuse for many people. But in a way, the
mhm,
reason immigration is such a problem is that people are coming into Britain and coming into France at a time when the economies are stagnant,
mhm,
which causes many people to associate the fact that their wages aren't rising with the fact that these people from outside are coming in and are supposedly putting a downward pressure
mhm,
on wages. And there may be some truth to this too. So, for these reasons, people are angry, they're very dissatisfied, they have no trust or faith or belief in their governments or the political class of their countries. They see that whenever the government tries to, as it claims, improve the situation, what it is doing is just piling on more burdens on them
mhm,
by increasing taxes, by cutting social spending, by
mhm,
doing these kind of things. And this is creating an increasingly fragile situation. We saw that with the protests in London, which, as I said, was very different from any other protest in Britain that I can remember. And we
mhm.
see this with the protests that are now starting to build in France.
Well, if they don't fundamentally address these issues, I guess the protest will just continue. I mean, the disability,
Well,
I mean, it's unstable now. France is actually, in a way, very unstable,
it is
considering.
it is extremely unstable, but this is of course the problem because the political class in France, Britain, Germany are saying that the people who are being thrown up by these protests are radicals and agitators and far
Uh-huh,
right people and all of
uh-huh,
that. So we mustn't allow them into power. And
mhm,
steps are always being taken to prevent them coming into power. I mean, in Germany, just to give you an example, there was a mayoral election in a town called Ludwigshafen, which I know very well. It's the
mhm.
former hometown of the former German Chancellor Helmut Kohl.
Okay.
And the representative of the AfD was banned from standing. So, so this creates a sense that the political class is not only not governing properly and is increasing burdens on the people, but is closing the political system down
Mhm,
and is preventing challenges to itself. That's why we have the censorship controls in Britain, for
mhm,
example.
mhm,
And that, of course, is making the political situation even more difficult. In Germany, in that election, 70% of the people in Ludwigshafen, which is a West German city, very
mhm.
rich, by the way, refused to vote in the mayoral election because they said,
Yeah,
what's the point?
yeah, they
What's the
give up.
point?
They give
They
up.
give up.
Yeah,
They
they
give
give
up.
up. Mhm,
So, either they drop out of the political system or they become even more angry and they turn up to protests like the one we saw in London and the ones we're starting to see in Paris. It's a very dangerous situation, and not one I think that the political class in any one of these countries properly understands.
Talking about the war in Ukraine, so Poland most recently invoked NATO Article 4,
Yeah,
and supposedly there are Russian drones that was entered. Now there's somebody saying it's probably not even Russian drones. It could be Ukraine
yeah,
drones. You know, Ukraine sent those pretending to be
yes,
Russian drones. And the same thing happens, seems like in Copenhagen and Oslo. Actually, recently they have to close their airport temporarily because they
yes,
said they spotted some drones or what have you.
yeah.
So what is going on there? And seems very confusing to me.
It is very, very confusing. Now, I cannot understand why the Russians would want to
Yeah.
conduct incidents of this kind. I mean, they're winning the war in Ukraine, despite what
Mhm,
Trump said yesterday. There's no doubt that they are winning the war in Ukraine. They're advancing everywhere, every day. So why would they need to send
mhm.
um, unarmed decoy drones into
Yeah.
Poland? I mean, what is the point that's being made here? Either this was a fault and the Russians are open to that possibility. They contacted the Poles. They
Mhm,
said, look, we're very worried, very sorry that these drones went into your territory. Why don't we sit down and talk about this and you can explain to us what happened? Either
mhm,
they are a fault, either there was a fault, or it possibly, and this is a theory that some people have spread, these drones, which are decoy drones, fell to the ground. The Ukrainians collected a few of them, they
mhm,
refurbished them, and they sent them back across the border. And because they wanted to create an incident. Either way, this is a trivial event. I mean, it's an
mhm,
absolutely trivial event. I mean,
mhm,
it is not an attack on Poland or Denmark or anything of that kind. I mean, we don't even know where those drones that reached Denmark
mhm,
even came from. We don't even know that they're Russian so far, or that
mhm,
they even existed, by the way. So, I mean, this is a trivial incident. So, what is striking about this is the way in which some European officials and politicians have tried to use it.
mhm,
They've tried to create a huge crisis out of this incident, and clearly, that is intended to attract Donald Trump's attention and to get him to send fighter jets to
mhm.
Eastern Europe and the Baltic states at precisely at the time when we know that the Pentagon wants to pull them out.
I wonder whether, consider what you talked about previously about all these problems for countries like maybe Germany, maybe France, maybe, I don't know, even smaller countries, they all have their problems. And maybe
Yeah.
they kind of want this, make this a big deal to
Oh, yeah.
distract people from their domestic problems. That could be a
There is
way.
there, there is absolutely no doubt that that is going on. It's going on
Uh-huh.
all the time. I mean, it is relentless. I mean, one of the things you can do, for example, is that you can say, if somebody protests and says we should spend less on these unaffordable sums on Ukraine
Mhm,
and on rearming ourselves and
mhm,
start to attend more to our own domestic problems. You could say, oh, you're a Russian. You're a Russian agent. You are a far right agitator and a Russian agent. You're obviously repeating Putin talking points.
mhm,
That is a tool that is used every day,
mhm,
and it does intimidate and scare people, and it silences discussion. And absolutely, you tell people in the poor areas of Britain and France and Germany, well, we accept life is getting a bit harder for you. It's going to probably get a lot harder, but it's not
mhm,
really our fault. It's the real reason that is happening is that the bear next door is on the prowl, and we need to
mhm,
focus all our energy, all our attention, and all our resources on dealing with that. And don't worry, and don't be so concerned about the fact that the roof in your children's school is leaking and the water is coming through, and that you can't afford your gas bill, because the real danger is not there. It
mhm,
is from these terrible, wicked, awful people in the East. And that is what really we ought to think about. And it works. I mean, to some
Mhm.
extent, at least, it
Mhm.
does work. You do come across people who talk in this way. It doesn't work with everybody.
Mhm.
And with the demographics that are under greatest economic pressure, the poorer people, in other words, it doesn't work. It works least.
Mhm.
But an awful lot of people are, pulled along by this hysteria. And, so as a strategy, it has its purpose.
And then they pulled China in, saying without China, Russia would have lost, or almost like
Yeah.
something like that, right? As if
Yes.
Russia is so weak. I mean, oh, I mean, I just saw that. I think Zelensky was giving a speech in the UN and talking about that China should stop supporting Russia.
Yes.
Do they really believe that? Seriously, that without China, Russia would just be defeated by now?
You see, the thing to understand is that we talked about censorship. In a
Mhm.
system of censorship, people are not there in the television, on the television, in the newspapers, where people get most of their news. People are not there to point out those contradictions.
Mhm.
Now, some people, a lot of people now, especially younger people, go to social
Yeah.
media,
Mhm.
go to YouTube. They listen to programs like mine and yours,
Mhm.
and they hear those things there. But I think it is fair to say that, especially in Europe, they're still probably a minority, and the result is that most people either have to work out these contradictions and see them for themselves, which does happen. I mean, there are
Mhm.
people like that. Or alternatively, they just don't see them. And, they're told one day that the Russians are weak and a paper tiger, as Trump just called them. And at the same time, they're told that, the Russians are this aggressive bear that's on the prowl and is about to take over Europe. And it it is surprisingly easy to get people to believe two completely contradictory things at the same time. I've seen this happen so many times in my life. You can see this with this.